In 1973, investigators requested tapes that could help unravel one of the most powerful political scandals in American history. When the recordings arrived, one contained a mysterious gap with nearly 20 minutes of silence during a key conversation. The contents of that missing audio have never been recovered. Today, we examine the Missing Watergate Minutes. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to your mom's favorite podcast, all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins. Joining me, hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
I love that tagline, but it's true.
Yeah.
It holds weight to it. I know nothing about this scandal. I'll be honest. I don't know how it slid past me. I just know that the Waterloo scandal, Nixon was involved, etc. 20 minutes.
I'm gonna let it ride. Waterloo.
Is it Waterloo?
It's Watergate. I'm just late.
Watergate. There you go.
We're
See,
gonna let it
shows how much
ride.
I know. This is why the mystery is presented to me. Yeah, the Watergate scandal. So yeah, I know really nothing about it. 20 minutes of audio is. I'm assuming there's audio before the missing 20 minutes and after the missing 20 minutes. And so it's like,
Absolutely.
okay, someone went in and scrubbed some footage or scrubbed some audio. That's why I hate politics, man. People don't play by the rules and everyone's just like, oh, well. And I'm like,
Oh, well.
what do you mean, oh, well?
Yeah, what do you mean, oh, well?
Or just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, slap them on the wrist or something like that. Have some consequences presented to them, etc. But it's all just a circus.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I feel like we all know about Watergate. I've heard of it. And when you learn about it, it's a very high level thing. You're a kid. You don't have all the context to understand what it is. And so like we all kind of loosely know about Watergate. I'm going to walk you through all of those details so you can get the context, because what I didn't know, Fredo, I hadn't even heard of this until Jillian brought it up. There were, so all of these tapes, one of them, the mystery is what happened to 18 and a half minutes worth of audio recording just goes dead silent. And so, of course, you'll need all of the overview of Watergate for the context of that little mystery. And what's interesting is we know the outcome of the Watergate scandal, but it doesn't change the fact that this happened, who did it, what was missing, and all of those sort of things. It's a very interesting conversation.
Right.
And honestly, it is a very interesting look now that I have my adult brain on. I put that on just like a few weeks ago.
Okay.
It's interesting to look back at this case and understand it's actually a lot simpler than I thought, but it's also like, oh, I have a lot more context for politics and what this all means and what was attempted to be happening here, etc. But yeah, so you have a light understanding of Watergate, but you had no idea about the missing minutes or anything like that,
I have
right?
no understanding of Watergate at all. Whatsoever.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, you'll be a perfect audience proxy. You'll ask questions along the way, as always. But as we dive in, Task Force, I just want to say, this week on Red Web's Patreon page, we've got a bunch of things coming at you, as we always do. We've got another exclusive poll. If you want to choose your own adventure with Red Web, whether it be a movie club, a game we play, an outline we release, all of that, that's happening on Wednesday this week. And then on Friday for Movie Club, we have 10 Cloverfield Lane. Christian walks us through that movie, and it is a banger.
It's a good one.
That
was a good one. We all...
Yeah.
It's worth a watch if you haven't seen it.
It's super worth the watch. I'm glad I got a chance to rewatch it, because I think when I first watched it, I was all about the monsters and I wanted that. But man, it is a very good like thriller, keep you on the edge of your seat. You don't know what to trust and everything kind of movie. But all of that is available at redwebpod.com, where you can support us directly. All right. But with that, Fredo, let's dive into Watergate. We're going to go through an overview, like I said. Then we'll talk about the tapes and then get into the weeds about these missing minutes and how they might have happened and all of that stuff. So, the Watergate incident was a political scandal that occurred during Richard Nixon's presidency. 5 men who were part of Nixon's re-election campaign broke into the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, headquarters that was at the Watergate Hotel, hence the name. This went down on June 17th, 1972. They were tasked with a few things. And actually, I believe that they were called Team CREEP. CREEP.
Oh, okay.
The Committee for Re-electing the President, which only has one E, by the way.
Yeah. Crap.
But they were tasked with a few things. Planting listening devices and gathering classified information that might aid Nixon's campaign in the re-election. Of course, wiretapping the office. And then they also attempted to photograph some of the Democratic campaign documents that could be used in order to help Nixon, who, if it's not obvious, was a Republican, hence why he's kind of having people infiltrate the Democratic committee, right?
I actually do remember a little bit of this, yes.
Okay. So you'll know then, like, the tapes are the through thread of this whole thing, and we'll build up to that too. The White House denied involvement in the break-in, as one might. Now, of course, this is election year. He is the incumbent president, so he is currently sitting president, hence why the White House is saying, hey, we have nothing to do with this break-in. Famed journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein reported that the FBI had found connections between the burglary and Nixon's aides. Nixon then went on to win the second term in a landslide. This was November of that year, and the Watergate trial then began a few months later, kind of at the beginning of January in 1973. So that year is when we really started to unfold this case. By the way, the landslide was huge. He won 49 out of the 50 states. I believe it was like an 18 million vote gap when turnout was not nearly what it is today, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
but like, Jesus, why?
Swept.
How is it such a huge sweep? Like, what happened on the Democratic side? Like, do we just not have someone worth like running?
I'll be honest,
what?
I don't even remember who it was. Christian, do you mind looking up who the Democratic campaign candidate was at that time? But I mean, when I look at mid-century America, I feel like a lot of elections were like that. You know, it wasn't nearly as polarized politically. People kind of voted for the stronger persona or the person who had done the most good for the country. And so there was a lot of cross-aisle voting often. I mean, I remember even talking to like my grandfather and elders of my family and them talking about, yeah, well, we talk about JFK, we talk about Nixon, we talk about, you know, and those are two different parties, but it's like they were just the obvious choice, it seemed.
Mm-hmm. It was Richard Nixon against George McGovern.
But it's in the name. He should be a governor. He's not McPresident, okay?
Yeah, you kind of have to, you know what I mean? Stick in your lane. This one's kind of chosen for you, but I would stick in it.
Just like my dentist, whose name is Crentist. Office reference. Always got to drop him in. Okay, so here we are, 1973. Nixon is now president, and like I said, the Watergate trial begins in early January. Now, on May 17th, 1973, Senator Sam Ervin opened a Senate Select Committee to look into the Watergate burglary. Digging deeper, we've seen bureaucracy, even in recent years, take months to really make major steps. But the first nationally televised hearing for this entire case happened on the next day, here on May 18th, 1973. Now, a couple of months later, on July 16th, 1973, former Presidential Appointments Secretary Alexander Butterfield testified on a live broadcast of the Senate Hearing Committee. So Butterfield actually revealed that Nixon had been keeping recordings of his conversations and phone calls ever since 1971. This is the piece I feel like we all kind of know about. It is why this case was blown so wide open. Unrelated to Watergate, it's just something that he decided to do in 1971, where they would have taping systems located in the Oval Office, the Cabinet Room, Nixon's private office in the old Executive Office building, and also in the Presidential Lodge in Camp David. So basically, wherever this guy goes, he's tapping himself.
Right.
And in hindsight, not the best.
No, not at all.
In hindsight, I definitely wouldn't either, as I walk around with my smartphone. But it's also kind of interesting because, you know, you talk about so many different things. It's like the perfect documentation, right? You don't need somebody to sit in and cast minutes, and those minutes could be wrong. Minutes being like meeting notes. And so you just have it on tape. Well, came around in 1973, just 2 years later, kind of bit him in the butt. So in July of 1973, 2 days after Butterfield testified, Nixon reportedly ordered that the White House taping system should be disconnected. Aha! Starting to get a little bit of a red flag situation.
Yeah, why? Why does it matter now?
Well, if It's a simple thing. If the world knows, why don't you just keep taping yourself? Honestly, this might be a little bit of a Barbra Streisand effect, but in the following months, Nixon would refuse to subpoena the records of his calls and conversations to Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, saying that they were vital to national security. So he's like, no, in no way am I going to allow these to go to the court to be listened to because they're top secret.
Okay. I feel like we could have a proxy here. I don't know, a proxy chosen from each side, but then again, I don't know, politics, they like to play games. It's very annoying.
No, you are right on the right track. Gut instinct comes true. So a special prosecutor, I honestly had to look this up, is an independent lawyer. So this isn't just going straight to the court necessarily. This is an independent lawyer appointed to investigate and prosecute government officials for potential wrongdoing, especially in a case like this where there might be conflicts of interest with the regular Justice Department, where partisanship could definitely play a hand in whatever's unfurling here. So you're totally right. And that's who Archibald Cox was, a special prosecutor. Months later now, right after refusing to have these subpoenaed, on October 19th, 1973, Nixon offered a compromise known as the Stennis Compromise, where instead of handing these tapes over to the council, the tapes would instead be summarized by Democratic Senator John Stennis, hence the name of the Stennis Compromise. So we were all asking, Christian and I, why John Stennis? Why was this particular Democratic senator chosen? He had a strong reputation, nonpartisan, much more loyal to the government rather than just specifically his party. But ironically, from all the sources that I've seen on this person and why he might have been chosen, it appears that he was also hard of hearing. Therefore, he might have been prone to mistranscribing or misunderstanding some of the tapes, because it's not like these offices were filled with 360 stereo microphones.
Right.
If someone's far from the mic, it's a little mumbling.
That's unfortunate. You're hired. You're like, yeah. It's like, hired him because he's terrible at his job.
Right. I hired him because he's a great senator, but he can't hear for crap.
Can't hear for anything. Oh my God. That's foul.
I mean, it has a look to it, right? It looks like he's being nonpartisan. It looks like he's not being biased. He's like, look, I picked a reputable person from the other party. It just so happens that right now he's very hard of hearing. Yeah. So that part's not a good look. The next night is the night known as the Saturday Night Massacre. Now, no blood was shed, but they love these massacre and brutal titles for these things. So on this night, again, the next day, Nixon ordered Cox's removal in response. I should reiterate that Cox declined this compromise, and that's why 24 hours later, around 9:30 to 10 p.m., he goes, all right, this guy's got to go. And in order to do this, Nixon called upon Attorney General Elliot Richardson in order to get him fired. Richardson then refused, and he subsequently resigned from the role. Nixon then turned to Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus. Ruckelshaus then also refused and subsequently resigned. So now we're at Solicitor General Robert Bork, who was left to carry out this deed now as acting Attorney General. And he did, in fact, fire Cox. So now when you kind of truncate it all, it looks real fishy. Hey, do this. Okay, now quit. Now you do it. Okay, well, you're not going to do it. Get out of my way.
Right. It just seems like it's like curating in a sense, where it's just like, we want things done a certain way. And if you're not going to abide by those rules or fulfill what we're looking for, then we're just going to replace you. Done.
Right. What is interesting is that Nixon then appointed Leon Jaworski as the special prosecutor on November 1st, 1973. So this is the person to replace Archibald Cox. This is, again, supposed to be the impartial party who will investigate this. And there's a huge conflict of interest because the guy that is recorded on these tapes, who might be involved in the Watergate scandal, we don't know yet at this point in time, is also hiring the person who is going to investigate it. It feels fishy. Now, this saga would then lead U.S. representatives to draft an article of impeachment against Nixon in early 1974. So shortly after this, in the case United States versus Nixon, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Nixon had to turn over the tapes for review, denying his claims of executive privilege. boy, how times mirror history. Isn't it strange?
Yep.
So 6 days after this, Nixon began turning over the tapes, and these tapes contained 3,700 hours of conversations,
Jeez.
or in another way, just over 154 days of just straight conversating.
Oh my God, that's so much to go through. That's so much.
However, and I don't know how they figured this out, if it was like looking through all 3,700 hours, or if it was like logging it against meeting notes or what have you, but cutting to the chase, it turns out that only 200 of these hours were spent discussing Watergate. And so we do have a much more honed in arena for this investigation to explore rather than half a year's worth of audio. So 200 hours, not too shabby, maybe a week's worth of straight recording. November 17th, 1973, months after turning over the tapes, Nixon passionately delivered his infamous speech where he maintains his innocence and exclaims, quote, "I am not a crook." I'm sure you've heard that phrase before.
And I have.
Yeah. Well, 4 days after the speech, the White House reported that tape 342 was mysteriously missing 18 and a half minutes from its recording. In other words, to be very specific and describe this better, there's a large, completely silent gap in the middle of this recording, conversating on either side, but 18 and a half minutes of uninterrupted silence.
So here's the thing. I will say, I mean, we know Nixon was recorded. We all knew that. The end of it all, but kind of be in the moment type thing. I mean, 18 minutes missing. If someone is doing nefarious things and deeds, I feel like it would be scattered around all the audio recordings, not just I gave everything bad and did everything bad within 18 minutes. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
I'm doing some quick math, and that's 0.0925% of the total recordings is silent.
Like it would
Yeah.
be so many more hours. It'd be hours.
Right. I feel like way more tapes would be tampered with. But I mean, here's the thing. When it's such a high publicity like case, when so many people are aware of it, so many eyes are on it, any gap is going to have an eyebrow raised.
Oh, for sure.
And so a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe the smoking gun, the thing that will allow us to close this case is in those minutes. Otherwise, they're kind of dancing around it, being ambiguous. Nothing we can get them in the court of law with. Hold on to that thinking, though. Because, yeah, there's 200 hours. 18.5 minutes does feel small, but man, does it stand out. So this particular gap, though, occurred during a crucial conversation. And this is why so many people were suspicious. Because it wasn't just in any of these 3,700 hours, it was in the middle of a pretty heavy conversation related to Watergate. They know that because of the meeting minutes that were taken. I'll talk about that later. But it led investigators to believe that someone had deliberately erased any sort of potentially incriminating evidence, and that's how the 18.5 minutes of silence came to be. And there's a few more details about that silence that I'll get to here in a little bit, but there's a few other reasons why people start to really raise an eyebrow and hone in on this. Meanwhile, I need you to know people are scouring those other 200 hours.
Oh, it gotta be.
Yeah.
have to be.
So, I mean, we know the outcome. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with those quality shades that are built to last, because our friends over at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that will not break the bank. I love Shady Rays. I'm so happy to have them as a sponsor. And if you don't know who they are, Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. If your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear, because every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Again, I wear Shady Rays all the time, so I'm so happy to have them as a sponsor, because I have a different pair of Shady Rays for every outfit, and I love to go on my walks. I talk about that all the time. But seriously, whether you're driving, going on a vacation, sitting at the beach, I use these on my honeymoon straight up because I love their polarized lenses. If you're ever seeing that reflection off car windows or off the water, it can be blinding, and that polarized lens is necessary. And the fact that they're really affordable makes it nice to have an array. You don't have to splurge on one solid pair. You can have an array of sunglasses sunglasses that fit every different occasion or style. Exclusively for Task Force members, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal. Head to shadyrays.com, then use code REDWEB. You're going to get 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Shadyrays.com, use promo code REDWEB. 35% off! When looking at the records, they're able to kind of figure out that tape 342 was recorded specifically on June 20th, 1972. The people talking on that tape, the conversations are being held between Nixon and his chief of staff, H.R. Bob Haldeman. Nixon's secretary, of all people, his secretary, Rosemary Woods, was tasked with transcribing the tapes before turning them over to the prosecution. This would be around late 1973 or so when this was happening, but that does feel like another conflict of interest. And while transcribing, Woods would be listening to this tape or various tapes on the Uher 5000. I have a picture of that for you here if you want to take a look.
Yeah, it's a big old tape recorder. Damn, this thing is massive.
That's not no Walkman. You can't. That's definitely a sit, man.
It's like a projector you'd have in like a movie theater or something, but this is like a big old tape recorder. Jesus.
She chonky for sure. That's a big old piece of tech.
Yeah, she big.
I kind of like it though.
That's the beautiful thing about technology. As time goes on, it becomes more compact.
There's something about it though, is maybe at the time it's like it's beige and it's kind of boring and ugly. I think that thing looks kind of cool.
It does look
that
cool.
retro tech.
Yeah, it's got like an old school vibe to it.
Absolutely. So the Uher 5000 was a 2-track single channel tape recorder, and it was widely used at this time. Very simple device. Otherwise, this is how she's playing this back, listening at her desk and writing down what she's hearing in these conversations, again, before handing them over. Now, of note, the device also had a pedal that controlled playback and recording remotely, depending on how it was configured. For Woods, she had set up the pedal to pause the playback with her foot. So when her foot was off the pedal, it would stop. She'd push it down again and it would play. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's convenient.
Rather than the clunky buttons.
Yeah.
So during one of her transcription sessions, she said she had received a phone call. She claims that she accidentally hit the record button instead of the stop button on the device, which led to an accidental recording over the original file. And without a microphone, of course, you get a completely silent gap. And I do think that this sounds viable. It feels possible.
It does feel possible, especially if they're working long hours. There's so much footage to go over. It's repetitive. It's boring.
Oh, yeah. These are the driest conversations.
Yeah, it's completely possible.
Right. And to add to this, dude, take a look at this second image where I found a closer image of the buttons themselves. These are the ones that are stop, play, record, all that stuff.
Oh, hey.
And as you can see here, the two buttons are right next to each other. Stop is the black button in the middle. To the right by one button is the beige record button.
It is. It's right there. Yeah, I mean, lends more evidence to completely possible.
Completely possible. However, let's now build on this. Okay, so that's what we're told. You accidentally hit record. Let's go further, because two things make this particular scenario a little more difficult, if not physically awkward. First up, she would have had to hit play and record at the same time to actually record. Very common for old tech. Play was not necessarily play as we know it, but rather a motor to turn the playback, to move the wheels and move the tape. Record to initiate the writing onto the tape. So that makes a lot of sense. You'd have to hit play and record at the same time. In this case, again, she claimed that the pedal controlled the playback. So in order for her to accidentally record some sort of blank slot, she would need to hit record while her foot is down on the pedal, keep her foot down on the pedal while doing whatever it was that she was doing, in this case, answering the phone call. And this leads us to the second point, which is her phone was behind her. She had an L setup. It was two separate desks, but they were in kind of an L shape. And I do have a picture for you. I'll show you now. Her phone was behind her and on another desk. She would require herself to roll her chair back and twist around to reach it, all while, in order to record, keeping her foot on the pedal.
This damn show. All right, there's the other foot that drops. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, it's totally possible. But anyways, that being said, she'd have to be dangling from a string above a sea full of water lions and fireproof water.
Yes.
Like, okay, well, maybe not as possible to do it. Thanks.
Right. We're like, all right, case closed. Wait a minute. Now I'm scrambling.
Yeah, and here is
Okay.
the page turn. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot in sequence in order
Yeah.
to have that fall into place. It goes from like very likely to highly unlikely.
It's definitely dancing on a precipice here. And this is where a lot of people, it was in the news at the time. People are going, all right, hold on. So again, I'll reference this image here in a second one more time. But when she testified in front of a grand jury in 1974, she was asked to demonstrate how this might have been done. How did you answer the phone while keeping your foot on the pedal at the same time? Right? Because again, that stands out. And so here in this image that I showed you earlier, we have what is known as the Rosemary stretch because of the awkward stretched angle that she would have to position herself in order to perform both tasks. You see her left foot there at the bottom of the image, pushing down on the pedal. She's leaned back, twisting over her left arm, picking up the phone on the opposite corner of her, what is that, perpendicular desk.
Yeah.
And Fredo's, you could hear him leaning back, reaching for that phone.
Yeah. Body popping because it's just old.
We'll put in the pop sounds for you.
Oh.
But this led many people to grow suspicious about the validity of her answer. They're looking at the fact that she is the secretary. She sits right outside the Oval Office. And so people are like, are you covering up something? Did you do something? Are you part of this? Etc., etc. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, great. This seems possible. Ultimately, we have our answer. What else could possibly be going on here?
Right.
Well, let's turn another page, Fredo, as this podcast tends to do. Woods remains insistent, okay, that while she might have been responsible for recording over this tape, she would only be responsible in her memory for a 5-minute gap in the recording due to her phone call. So again, now you start to have another angle on this. Okay, if she was able to do this, she didn't, in her own admission, do 18 and a half minutes. She is not responsible for this full gap, she says.
Right.
So at first it sounds like, okay, maybe you're covering up the entire gap with this kind of weird stretch maneuver. But now she's like, no, I might have actually recorded something, but I don't remember my phone call being nearly 18 and a half minutes, let alone my foot being down on the pedal for that whole phone call. So ultimately she's saying that the audio is not my fault entirely. And of course, as you know now, like we don't even have it now, but the audio is not able to be recovered for the trial. And oh man, we'll talk about it in the closing of this case where that audio is now. But
it's just like, what are the chances that that phone call happened during that exact time period, but then also like that time in the recording, but then also I guess like it was the perfect spot that partially was recorded over, and then they went, ooh, I guess 5 minutes is done, the work is done for us, let's go in and clean up the next like 13 minutes. Like, it's just so weird. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Did she accidentally stumble into the evidence that was necessary and start to erase over that? I don't know. You're setting up the idea, though, of plausible deniability, which we will kind of assess. So like I said, no audio was able to be recovered for the trial, and on November 21st, 1973, Judge John Sirica conducted a panel nominated jointly by the White House and the Special Prosecution Force. The panel was given 2 Uher 5000s, the same setup that you were looking at just before, as well as additional recording devices that the White House had used. They're getting all of the things, all of the hardware that the House is using because they want to essentially do some forensics analysis on how things work. I love this part because this is where we actually get pretty tangible. So they concluded, oh, this is so interesting. They concluded that the gap in the recordings was an intentional erasure, that this was not accidental, that the 18 and a half minutes of silence consisted of specifically 5 to 9 different segments of silence, and that at least 5 of these silent moments required hand operation and could not have been done via the foot pedal. So, maybe Rosemary Woods is at fault for unfortunately recording a silent bit. But what do you have to say about the other 4 to 8 segments of silence that are definitely done by hand, it seems, for most of them? So I was curious about the logistics of all of this, and in order to get to this conclusion, forensics audio experts were analyzing the tape's magnetic patterns and audio signals, and despite to you and me, Fredo, this gap being dead silent, there's actually in that silence, if you really blow up the waveform as we might on a computer, if you really look closely at the magnetic signal recorded into the tape, there are start-stop points within there. And you and I might hear them as clicks of static, old analog stuff. You can tend to hear sort of that kind of thing, but they were able to identify those. And so it looked like somebody who would record silence, listen back to see if they'd covered it up, go back, record more silence, and just continue to extend it until whatever was being talked about was finished being erased.
Yeah, so it seems very deliberate. And even then, like, very carefully done.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love that they almost reversed engineered this, because with these Uher 5000s, I suppose that they were recording silences themselves. They were looking at how silences were recorded over top of tapes. And this is where they identified differences. There were variations in the magnetic field that differentiated a manual button press versus the continual foot pedal use. So instead of saying foot pedal, hit record, if you hit play record on the actual device, both would come up with slightly different silences.
Got it.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
They sound the same,
Right.
but the profile, the data is slightly different. Oh, I love that. I'm kind of
you
geeking
love
out over that.
You love that because the person that went in there and went over it didn't have a huge, deep knowledge or understanding of it. They were like, I was told that this is just the way it works, and this is the recording, and this is how you record over, and that's what they did. Gotcha.
Yeah, dude. I might be spilling from my notes here, but at this point in the outline and in research, I was like, well, dude, it sounds like Rosemary Woods was the scapegoat that maybe she did this. And then it gave people the idea. Well, while you accidentally did that, let me just go ahead and extend it, or maybe, who knows? Maybe she was thrown to the wolves and she was the fall guy.
True.
Just say you did this and we actually did it,
Yeah, and we'll take care of you.
Right. And we'll get to the theories here in a second, but let's talk about the outcome. I just don't want to leave this case hanging. So, August 5th, 1974, the White House released transcripts from 3 conversations that Nixon had with Haldeman going back to June 23rd, 1972. If that sounds familiar, that is 3 days after the missing tape conversation. So, it turns out that whatever was erased was likely damning, because 3 days later is the smoking gun transcript that revealed Nixon's complicity in the Watergate cover-up. And so again, just 3 days later, maybe they should have been better about erasing their stuff, but hey, thankfully they weren't, and somebody was found out for doing sinister, nefarious deeds. But 3 days later...
Rightfully so.
Right. Justice held its course. So 3 days after the White House released those transcripts, Nixon announced that he would be resigning from the presidency effective noon the next day. All this leads us to believe that someone was erasing the tapes sometime mid-1973, beyond just Rosemary Woods potentially accidentally doing this. And whoever it was, it does seem forensically intentional. So who this was and what specifically they erased might forever remain a mystery. And honestly, it may be moot, like I said, considering they still found out what they needed and were able to kind of convict the person or identify that he was complicit in the whole burglary. But we still have a good mystery, and I love one. And a government cover-up at that. Whatever's going on behind the scenes, it's certainly with the government. So there are a few theories that attempt to explain this one, and that's where I want to go next. So before I dive in, as always, Fredo, what's standing out to you right now? Do you have any gut instincts as far as what might have been going on, who might have been culpable for this erasure beyond maybe Nixon himself?
I mean, just the whole staff. I mean, you know what I mean? At that point, I feel like, I don't know, Nixon just seemed like the kind of president and the kind of character where everyone would be involved, and they kind of loop everyone in and we're like, hey, we're all in this together because it's just gonna have to be how it's gonna be. Strong arming people, maybe even threatening people. So I think that, I don't know, I don't see just one person with all the secrets holding the bag, covering up. I just feel like it's the whole network.
No, I mean, it seems that everybody that was close to this particular case was also close to Nixon themselves, by employment or otherwise. And within that web of conflict of interest, I'm with you. It does feel that it's possible many people were involved. It's possible that back scratches were had, quid pro quos were happening, or dare I say it, it's just spitballing, blackmail.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw this where people were strong-armed into firing people, and if not, then they themselves resigned. So we don't know what was said behind closed doors. I don't want to propagate hearsay, but let's dive into the theories. And first off, you know, there's a few different theories on exactly what the 18 and a half minutes were, what pieces of conversation was within that. But one of the things that almost everyone can agree upon, because this is kind of contentious when it gets down to the details, what most people can agree on is the general topics. It's widely believed that if the erasures were intentional and not the result of an accident or something like that, it would be to hide Nixon's involvement in Watergate. I mean, I think that that's just straight up, especially since the tape that got him was 3 days later. It must have been a conversation that week. And it's suspected that Nixon or his aides were the ones that organized this robbery to get this information about their opponent in the upcoming election. Again, ironically, didn't need any of that help, but because he did this, it ended up spoiling the presidency that he kind of swept to get. Now, up until this point, Nixon and the White House had staunchly denied any sort of involvement in the Watergate breach. And while Nixon claimed that he does not remember what was discussed in this missing conversation, what we do have is Haldeman, his right-hand man. Haldeman's meeting notes from that day point to Watergate arrests as the topic of discussion. And so when you're talking about the fallout of Watergate, and there's not much else in his minutes, and before you're talking about it, after you're talking about it, it's kind of like not very enlightening, but it definitely implies that that's all you talked about that day.
Exactly.
And maybe, yeah. And then maybe something that colored him guilty was said during those minutes. Who knows? Regardless, the missing minutes were definitely something about Watergate, and it's Haldeman's meeting notes combined with the proximity to the Watergate burglary that gives this theory so much credibility. Again, it's less intriguing, I think, in hindsight, because again, we know the end result, but I can't properly pin down to you like how big this was at the time. Like, yes, okay, we
most definitely.
Yeah, the courts are like, all right, we got our man, we felt suspicious and now it's confirmed, but like, it's very possible that this was the only tape that could have implicated him in this scandal. And so it's almost so interesting to me because like, there's elements of cover up, there's elements of like, how? Like, it seems so simple, but how, like, at such a high level, somebody almost just like skirted away with it.
She completely got away with it. I mean, it's always hard to think of it because then it's like, this is someone with so much power, but then it's also someone with so many eyes and so many people that are always surrounding that person. So it's like, how do you keep said secrets? Who do you trust when you're pressed? You know, who's going to fold, who doesn't? It's
that web of trust that we, the constituents, hope to have within the government, that even if somebody has conflicts of interest or point persons in certain key roles, one's got to hope that truth will out. That at some point, if something sinister was done, in this case, the break into Watergate, that it will be found out, you know? And it was. But moving from here, there's a couple of other angles, mostly talking about Woods. So some theorize that while she may have accidentally erased the first 5 minutes, the remaining 13 and a half was deleted by Nixon himself or his aides, realizing that, hey, we could blame this on Woods. And like I said, this one definitely came to mind as I was looking through this, because genuinely, there's like 3 main doors into the Oval Office, and I believe sitting from the president's desk, it's the one straight ahead and to the right. That one goes Well, there's 4 doors. One goes outside, but one goes straight to the secretary's room. After Woods testified, she became somewhat of a laughingstock given the awkward position of the Rosemary stretch that she defended. Of course, you think of news today, we're humans. The news of that day wasn't much different, so they're like, yeah, right, okay, and then they're like probably mocking it on TV or something.
Definitely. Cracking jokes.
Yeah. However, many have claimed that Nixon was very technologically inept and would not have been able to pull off the erasure on his own. Maybe not knowing that you got to hit record and play at the same time, buddy.
Yeah, no way.
But because of that, Nixon's chief of staff at the time, Alexander Haig, is suspected to be involved in the remaining segment erasures. So the reason for that is because Nixon and Haig worked very closely together, and it's been reported that Haig is credited with keeping things running behind the scenes while Nixon was dealing with the Watergate scandal for essentially a year and a half, 2 years, maybe more. I think more. So yeah, 2.5 years. So it's theorized that Haig and Nixon actually hatched the plan to frame Woods. This is kind of hearsay, but maybe hatched this framing plan after she deleted some segments because she confessed that she had done, well, maybe I did 5 minutes, but I didn't do it all. And then they're like, ha.
Right. But
here comes the plan.
You already confessed, and then it's like, look what dropped into our lap. Like, let's just go ahead and pin the rest. I mean, you're already there in the moment. You're confessing to doing it. What's to say you didn't just do the rest? Make it easy. Kind of writes itself type thing.
Right. A rounding error, And so Woods also claimed that Nixon was very calm when he found out about the erasure. She was saying, yeah, I confessed. I was a little frazzled. I thought I'd really messed things up. And he was like, that's fine. That's no problem. Don't worry about it. Something very calm. And so some think that this calm demeanor is another indication of ulterior motives. I would imagine if I was guilty and I said something that implicated me, and then someone said, sir, I'm sorry, I lost the fingerprints,
right?
Or whatever, I might be like, that's really upsetting,
Yeah. And I'd question that. I'd be like, well, it seems like it's important and you're okay that it's gone.
Yeah. But at the same time, I gotta say, he is a president. This man's dealing with high stress things. And so I don't necessarily fault him for just being calm in the face of stress. But it did stand out at the time. A lot of people thought that was strange. So let's flip now the table on Woods, because it's also been theorized that despite Woods' account that she might have done this, that, or the other, she might have been involved, that she was either covering for the president or, made the initial gap in the recording or what have you. Some believe that it was actually there all along. It's once again believed that Nixon and Haig, if this is true, were the co-conspirators of sorts, erasing small segments at a time to not appear suspicious, So somebody steps out of the office, you erase maybe 3-4 minutes before they come back. And then the next day you erase another couple minutes because, like I said, forensics analysis looked at the 18.5 minutes and said 5 to 9 segments. So that's somewhere between 3 and 2 minutes per recording.
See, that kind of like lends itself more towards the theory that I had, right? It was like, it's not all going to be together. There might be like segments, and then from there, there's going to be different pieces, different times where things were deleted.
Maybe bathroom breaks, water breaks. That's exactly what that feels like,
Yeah.
We talk now like what was in it. That feels obvious. We're talking now about like maybe who it was, and we really are honed in on Nixon and Haig. In fact, on October 1st, 1972, it's reported that Nixon and Haig went on a long car ride together through the countryside. And again, this is kind of hearsay, but many people believe that these affairs were discussed away from the president's existing listening devices in the White House. So it couldn't become this rat's nest of evidence pointing to evidence and what have you.
Got it.
But it's suspected that on this long car ride where they just kind of cruised through, I suppose, the countryside, it was abnormal. They weren't going anywhere. And so because of that, people thought, well, maybe this is where they hatched the plan to erase these tapes. Agnostic of Woods, right? We're talking now about a world where they kind of knew this tape had something on it, went in and just chipped away at it. Maybe not knowing that other tapes had stuff. And what's also interesting, and the reason why Haig keeps coming to mind, not only is he chief of staff, at some point, almost making fun of the situation, he claimed that a, quote, sinister force might have erased the rest of the tape. And it's one of those moments where I feel like someone who's guilty...
Sorry, what?
Yeah, a sinister force. I think when looking at this, he might have actually been joking about like a specter, like a demon came through and sucked the tape empty. But what this rings a bell to me. This feels like one of those cases where like the guilty party is kind of caught, but they're not caught yet. So they're the ones talking to the press about it. And so they go, I don't know, some brilliant genius must have done this one, but it's them.
Talking it up, have their cake and eat it too.
They go back behind the scenes. They nudge each other, say, watch what I'll say on camera next. And they'll have no idea that I'm talking about me,
Mm-hmm.
Now, to kind of finish up this theory and point back to Haig a little bit, he insinuated at some point in time that Woods must have lost track of time, that in her confession of erasing these 5 minutes, that it must have actually been the full 18 and a half minutes, that, oh, well, you confessed, maybe you thought it was 5 minutes, but, you just lost track of time. It's all on you, right?
Right, yeah. Who's to say you really gauged the proper 5 minutes during that time? And I don't know, can they not? I mean, nowadays they can, but during the time, I guess you can't go back and look at whether or not that phone conversation was that long.
Ooh, I don't know if you can. That's a good question, though. Dang, I know. I feel like that's got to be a thing, right? That's got, like, someone patched that through, but there's no digital records? Good question.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, dude, I don't know. What if that was like a planted phone call? Nixon's listening on his headphones, and he's like, I think... Oh my God, this is the moment. Call her. Erase the tape button.
Yeah. Call her now. Cause confusion and chaos.
Release the doves at the window so she moves to the right slightly and hits the record button. Make sure she's got a lead shoe on so her foot stays down.
Right.
We'll get this whole thing erased. It'll be all her fault.
Super elaborate.
Right, like a Final Destination trap or something. Well, this one's really interesting. It's like, I found it so fascinating from the outset, despite everything around it being solved. It's just this weird through thread that, like I said, kind of becomes moot. But I hate when there's an unanswered question. Yeah. It's like this juicy thing.
Yeah, that is the nature of the show, unanswered questions.
Always. Now, ultimately, because Wood's involvement could not be proven or disproven, she never faced any charges. And ultimately, it's unclear who exactly erased the tapes. We don't really even know what was said, except for it was likely around Watergate. Although there have been several attempts to try to recover what these deleted tapes contained throughout the years, none, of course, have ever been successful. Except when we release this podcast, someone will crack the case a week later.
That's how it works on this podcast, man.
It always goes that way.
Most likely, we'll never know. Oh, I guess we do know now.
We will never know. Breaking news, right? Now, here's what I love. I love, these tangible pieces of evidence. We love forensics analysis. We love deep questions and thought and analytical, lenses. But here's another thing I love. When evidence isn't lost, when evidence is instead saved and preserved. And in this case, the tapes are currently located in a temperature-controlled sealed vault in case there's ever a new technology that can look at these magnetic tapes and figure it out and crack the audio off.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Yes. We'll know eventually. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe there's something further down the line that'll like crack a ton of cases open.
Right.
Who's to say?
Right. It's always going to be the week after we cover it. Right?
Oh,
That's
always.
just how it goes.
Always.
It's like Van Gogh paintings, or maybe it's Da Vinci, or maybe it's... Michelangelo, man. I'll be honest, I don't know which of these painters were known for it, but there are paintings out there from the Renaissance time period that have been once scanned with like electron microscopes, or forgive me, I'm riffing, Task Force. You'll have to let me know what the actual technology was. They were able to see the layers behind the layers. They were able to see iterations of the painting that were almost rough drafts and then painted over, where details have been hidden. And it's taken over 1,000 years to make that happen. And I love that. I love that wasn't intentional, but it is possible that in maybe 100, 200 years, a week, we're able to look at this magnetic strip and see what was once behind it. Mm-hmm. Because while data can be scrubbed and made difficult to recover, and yes, in many cases completely corrupted and lost, I do have to think with analog, physical, and this is audio files, I'm flexing my ignorance. With a magnetic tape, I have to believe that there's some echo of what was on there.
Some imprint.
You won't be able to... Yes, something. You won't be able to get it all back off there, but it also depends on the tape, and it depends on this Uher recording device or what have you. But again, Task Force, let me know. You guys have this buff hive mind.
I know. We have people in so many different departments, like legit departments. And I'm just like, oh, okay. We actually do have a task force. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. The hive mind. And they all come to the Discord, available at redwebpod.com. Shout out. Where everyone theorizes and talks about stuff. And, you know, if we do an episode on case files, that's a perfect time to explore your guys' theories like we've done in the past. But as we come to a close and the credits start to roll, I want to give a huge shout out to a couple of task force members. Abigail, thank you for being the newest member and being an elite task force member at that. And then, of course, the buff member of the week is going to be Ben Painter. Thank you so much for your buff and rippling mind and all of your theories. And of course, the squonks on the hit list for this week, Fredo, are Clint from PS3 and Brett O'Meara. Thank you all for supporting the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, they're running around. They're in the vents. I know it. I know they're in the vents. I can hear them. I can hear them scurrying around,
slopping around, slushing, and yeah, dude. When your AC vent above your bed starts drooling, you know something's in there.
And it's a squonk, and they're hiding. They've got like a tunnel system or something. They've evaded me for now, but I will find them.
It's like Always Sunny. It's Charlie's got like scrawlings and graffitis in the vents so he knows where to go. The squonks have, all right, you're here at junction number 15 above task force sublevel 52. Go left and then go right, you know. All right, task force, thank you all so much. Fredo, this has been another mystery, the Missing Watergate Minutes. I'm glad I could run you through the Watergate scandal, but then also introduce you to something that snuck by me. I'd never heard of it.
Right. I think everyone knows about the Watergate scandal, but there's going to be a handful of people that don't know, wait, there was missing minutes and the details surrounding that and everything. So, yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery. Bye, moms.